We are.
Yeah. Read the reading list if you're interested in any of those or think any of them might sound cool, because there's some really weird stuff in here. Broder's engine is essentially a schematic.
We are
See, if you
on
take
the
the magnet
play.
and
Fortune
magnet, whenever you push the magnet through, it causes the electrons inside of the copper to shift. Whenever electrons shift, that's the electricity. So if we've got one coil and one magnet, and we do that, we get a bit of electricity. Cool. But what happens if we take 1,000 of them? We all line them up directly in order, to which whenever the magnet is moved, it causes an electron exchange, which therefore causes power. What if we put them all on a giant sort of lever that gently rocks back and forth? And the way that we power that is we just put a few of these copper magnet combinations at the bottom to power the mechanism that makes all the other magnets move. Say we build enough of these to fill up an entire warehouse, and yada yada, you could follow to the point that you could power a whole city through perpetual energy. While this has worked in closed experiments, the whole idea is we can't do it because big oil and evil electricity companies and all that good stuff. Everything seemed fine until she started to itch all over her body. She soon started developing scabs all over her skin. Her legs began to darken. It's now been determined that perhaps the appendix was used as a sort of digestive reboot, as a means of completely flushing the body system if it were to be too backed up by plant matter or bones or something that would be otherwise undigestible. But since we haven't eaten those things in so many years, we've slowly lost the use of it. So again, much like our tailbone, it's something that's just there because we used to eat it.
Yada yada
This is what I
yada.
get for doing the discovery.
I know where it is.
There's going to be one of these horrible things in every video I do.
And it's open. And now my drone.
Alright, so you see the word it says, right? So according to this theory, that
Hello,
is used
little
as a
bird,
rite
no
of passage in
legs.
several secret societies.
I saw
The
that.
reason for
I
this
saw
is that an unholy amount of people report to the emergency room every year with this, because they use
It's
the
not
concrete
a.
to
Oh no.
perform that action, and then they get stuck. But it's at such an alarming rate that
One,
people are responsible for doing it as some horrible satanic
two,
passage or whatever. It's just trying to explain why people aren't.
1, 2,
The dog suicide bridge is in reference to the Overton Bridge in Milton,
3.
Scotland. Ever since the 1960s, an absurd amount of dogs have leaped to their death from this bridge. Keep in mind, this isn't a small bridge at all. It's 50 feet off the ground, and it doesn't really make sense for dogs, animals that seemingly ready to suicide, to just jump off at such a big rate. It's so
We got
wild, the dogs
6
walking beneath the bridge get
OPA.
to the top just to jump off, and dogs that have jumped, survived, will limp their way back up to the top just to jump again. The primary theory that scientists have around the area is that perhaps there are several minks nesting and then marking their scent next to dogs go for it, which surely makes sense that are already down there around where the mink would be, climb to the top just to jump, or especially why a dog would jump, climb back up, and jump again. Especially since, according to legend, this has been going on since the 1960s. Many believe this to be a remarkable spiritual site in which spirits or the supernatural overwhelms these dogs to commit suicide from the bridge. I should also mention that in research for this, I found a story of in 1994, a man killed his newborn son on the bridge and then attempted to kill himself. While the stories go, the dogs have been doing this on the bridge since the 1960s. The first official reported cases of dogs jumping off began shortly thereafter. The sweet spot. Pro-war Buddhism is the fact that throughout history there have been different cases of Buddhists becoming pro-war or pro-defense in order to protect themselves. Buddhists are traditionally known as very pacifists all the way into the face of death, or at least the tradition of Buddhist monks. While it's well known that in South Vietnam around 1963,
I need a BOP.
Buddhists began to make very open protests.
I'm trying to be OP though. In Garden. Oh no, it's a scary bird.
I'm not saying anything about overarching religion or like specific ins and outs of religious beliefs in certain areas of Thailand. I am again describing a very complex situation in a couple minutes. So Again, bear with me. In Thailand in 2004, several Buddhist monks were attacked and killed by Muslim attackers. In response to this, several of these Buddhist monks began to arm themselves. Now, traditionally in Buddhist beliefs, this is completely however, they were interested in for example, as you can imagine, a Buddhist monk cannot be a member of the military. However,
Oh my god, are you okay?
So these sort of in the military people became traditional monks in order to protect other monks that existed in Buddha time. Asked the monk if it was true that some of the monks were arming themselves, and the monk lifted up his robe, pulled out a handgun, put it back, and they just continued the interview. It's a very interesting example of how far even the most peaceful people will go if they're pushed, or as the saying says, even a worm will turn. The Akashic Records put forward by Psychic Edgar Casey is a means of better understanding psychicness itself. According to Casey, whenever he felt psychic links with people, he would for one connect to them, but the second connection would be something that he calls the book of life. He describes it as a sort of cloud storage that exists all around us and everywhere at the same time. It contains the memories, thoughts, actions, and beliefs of every human that has ever existed. According to Casey, we are all connected through this secret, and possible memories or glimpses and even dreams that we have at any given point can either be a combination of positive and several seismic activities have been reported on the surface of the moon despite nothing but stars and taught them science and agriculture and things like that. The Babylonians were very similar. As a matter of fact, some believe the Old Testament translations that were mentioned of these Babylonians whenever they would talk about the angels coming down or God coming down, is actually just a version of these Anunnaki. So much so that people say the Tower of Babel, confuse their languages, is actually a space station they were building to go to the stars, to which the Anunnaki then confused their languages. So, yeah. The topic still believes is that the reason Anunnaki have done all this is simply for entertainment, and that watching us progress as a society has been this whole escapade that they get a watch from a distance. However, I like the other theory proposed by it. See, several of these Anunnaki images or things we see, although normally reptilians, seem kind of human. The belief being that sometime in the future, we will develop a concept of technology, or at least a different reality version of us will. So then from the future, we come to the past, we alter things that happen in the course of human history for whatever reason in the Sumerian and Babylonian Empire, and then watch how it plays out. So rather than just a puppet show for entertainment, perhaps this existence that we have in all of our human history is just an experiment for whatever our future selves needed to find out. And furthermore, perhaps issues that we've seen in science, such as not being able to understand time travel or understand how gravity or perpetual travel or something like that works, is these observers of our timeline purposefully manipulating it so that we don't get too far out of our box. Rapture already happened is in reference to the rapture event mentioned in the biblical text of Revelations. For those that don't know, there's debate among Christian groups of when exactly the rapture is supposed to take place. Not only like what year will happen, but when it will happen within the actual telling of the end of the world itself. See, there's something mentioned in the book of Revelations known as the tribulation period. This is a period of time in which the earth goes from doing really, really well to really, really bad in the span of 7 years. However, if someone was of the belief that, for example, in the book of Genesis, when it talks about how the world was formed, that the world was formed in 7 days, that it's not actually 7 days and more like 7,000 years, then imagine what 7-year tribulation period would actually be. In other words, if you're not literal with interpretations of time in the Bible, then a 7-year tribulation period might as well be 7,000. So in the Bible, when it mentions that during the tribulation period, God no longer interacts with the world, the devil has full control of it, and evil runs rampant, and if that is a period of time like 7,000 years, then what's to say we're not currently living in that? As a matter of fact, there are some beliefs that the rapture happened immediately after Jesus' crucifixion, which would mean that we're all living in a devil-controlled world and God won't hear us. So, again, only positive vibes on this channel. Kreider's endgame is in reference to journalist William Kreider. Kreider wrote from everyone from the Washington Times to the Rolling Stones However, the work that puts him on his list is his 1987 book, Secrets of the Temple: How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country. The book essentially talks about how there is a secret society that exists underneath the United States government and how they're proliferated through the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is building up a plan in order to enact a new world order and Illuminati and all that stuff. It's another theory that falls in line with the idea that banking circles are the ones actually running the country, and politicians essentially exist as figureheads. Soy spraying and weaponized soy is a reference to the proliferation of soy products in the modern industry. If you'll notice, in the last few years especially, soy has popped up more and more as either a substitute or a source in different foods and supplements. However, soy itself is an actual estrogen supplement, and consumed by males in large quantities can lead to testosterone deficiency. What the theory is saying is that the powers that be have put soy products everywhere they're not supposed to be in order to demoralize and demasculate their people who could theoretically overturn them if they ever saw fit. You can go further and say that with weaponized soy, that similar to how governments, especially the United States government, has been accused of psyops and long-term chemical warfare over time, the exact same thing, but with soy products in order to make the enemy less masculine. So what I'm saying is, government-sanctioned weaponized federalism. Yeah, bicameralism comes from a 1976 book written by Julian Jayes. Julian had a very interesting theory from where human consciousness came from. His idea was that as early as 3,000 years ago, the original forms of consciousness began to be created, and that before that, the brain was divided into two parts. One part told the other what to do, and the second part acted on it. And while you may think that's how consciousness works on its own, I am saying that it is a very literal, one side of your brain communicates to the other side has no thought process and simply carries out an action. This means that there is no form of contemplation, decision making, or thinking in the way that we would think of it now. One of Julian's references to this is such as the characters that were mentioned in the Iliad never really thought or decided what they were doing, instead they just kind of did things. So according to this theory, before the past 3 millennia, society existed with no meaning of self-awareness. And according to this theory, as society developed, we began to find the need to ask ourselves why, so the two sides of our brain kind of formed over the one that seems to ask questions, and that became the modern form of consciousness. Or in other words, the commanded part of the brain learned to think for itself, and the part that gave commands simply began to ask questions. Staring anxiety is the most literal form of brain rot. According to this theory, staring at any electronic screen for an amount of time will fry your brain, and not in the way that a parent would tell you to stop playing video games that fry your brain, in a literal your neurons begin to shut off and die kind of way. This would, of course, over time make a modern population a lot dumber, so therefore this theory is saying that the reason screens are everywhere around us and proliferated so much is a way for the elites to further control us. Ancient structural purpose is a huge topic to tackle, but I can get a few of them out of the way. For example, there are theories that ancient pyramids and ziggurats were actually the beginning of a sort of mining facility. Or in other words, whatever beings actually created them was doing so in order to stage a way to get inside the earth. Whereas other theories talk about how societies had these very advanced forms of architecture that doesn't really make sense for the time they were in. For example, in China, people built entire palaces into the sides of cliffs, something that is hard to understand and hard to accomplish by today's means. Furthermore, in Persia, they managed to run water systems off of the top of snow-capped mountains all the way down into their cities in order to have year-round cold water. A lot of this also gets back into the idea of sacral architecture, which is essentially architecture that is created for the sake of a sacredness rather than purpose. So you could think of this as like temples and buildings of temples. A lot of them are believed to be too advanced for their time or too advanced for the people that lived around these structures. So therefore some special means created them rather than just the people themselves. And I also have to mention my favorite theory, which I talked about in the last episode, that the Tao build wealth by riding off of it. Step 3, ever since the early 1900s, the United States has been hiding its actual capabilities and resources so that now in the modern day they can manage to produce false scarcity, creating
Bro, this game not fair.
Huh?
It's not fair.
What's that?
This game. It's a Lucky Block game on Minecraft. It doesn't give you the item.
Give me a few minutes.
All it gives you is nothing. What?
Why is your cat screaming at me?
He loves you.
Oh, he loves me? So he screams at me? Pick me, goddammit, pick me!
Pet me, please.
That meow does not sound like a please. That sounds like, get your hand the fuck over here and rub on me.
Oh,
Sounds like a demanding meow. Okay, up.
no. Help me.